Let's go to Nancy, your namesake, Kachungira, who's the first ever recipient of the Komla Dumor Award, who died last year, aged 41. And first, from the BBC side, in terms of that they set up this award to honor him, keep his memory alive, and you know, just what journalist he was, to pretty much say, you know, was a great mark for a journalist, and others can come and aspire to be like. What your thoughts are on that?
Well, I mean, Komla Dumor was an institution. I mean, lots of us grew up listening to him, you know, on BBC, and I think he was a big loss, not just to BBC, but essentially a voice for the continent. If you look at the sort of shows he was doing towards the end on BBC, you know, that were really focused on the continent, that was great. One of the things that these sorts of awards sort of make me uncomfortable about is they seem to imply different standards, you know, that there is standards for African journalists, you know, that are slightly different, if you will, from global journalists. And it makes me wonder about these sorts of awards that are region-based. You know, we hear CNN have the African Journalists of the Year, blah, blah, blah. In a way, you don't really hear of it in other continents, with the American CNN, American Journalist, or Asian Journalist, or European Journalist of the Year. You know, so again, it comes back to whether there is a particular problem within Africa that, you know, keeps up. There's many journalists within Africa who are trying to do their jobs. And I think sometimes these sorts of awards, good as they are, and it's fantastic that Nancy gets recognition for what she's doing, you know, and others do, you know. But I think we need to be asking ourselves, does this point to a problem within Africa that is situated only with us, or is it simply a perception that we are creating? And maybe it hides from us the fact that there are other issues that probably keep us.
But are you saying, like, for example, for CNN, I mean, they have other awards in their own countries, so that they have, say, CNN Africa Awards. For you, that suggests that there would be, what, a problem?
No, I'm just asking, I'm just wondering whether we, we hold, if you will, African journalists to a different standard than we do journalists elsewhere. You know, or, I mean, is there an assumption that there is a deficiency within Africa journalists, so that they need to be brought up, you know, in a way journalists in other continents don't need to? You know, what's the basis of an African award? You know, it's not.
But that's for the CNN awards. In this particular one, Komla Dumor, completely different.
Well, it's still an African award. I mean, it's for African.
He was an African, telling African stories. That was his passion. That's what he stood for. So I guess it then follows that you would have an award representing what he was about.
I'm not. I'm not. Against the award itself, in a sense. You know.
For you just feel like we have a problem.
It seems to be to paint a scenario where African journalists are treated slightly different, if you will, from journalists in other continents.
What do you think, Nancy?
Well, I mean, I would take a very different stand. Of course, it's raising, you know, pertinent issues, but I would take a very different stance on the matter. I think for me, from BBC's point of view, for them to have started this award is a recognition of African journalism. And, you know, Komla Dumor would have been forgotten had it not been for this. For the upcoming journalists, for the people who are in colleges right now, in another 3-4 years, you know, that would be a name that is completely forgotten. And elevating his memory to a point where there's an award that's been created to honor him, then ensures that his work is not forgotten. And so by default, we'll have to read and find out more about him, and, you know, pay attention to his stories, whether we like it or not. So that elevates African, you know, African journalism, and of course situates, you know, Africa is a place where there are journalists that can actually be recognized, and their memories, you know, kept alive. which is a good thing. It would be interesting to see who would then win the subsequent awards, going forward. I think what this means is that it also validates what KTN is doing. So this is something that KTN should brag about for as long as it still makes news. But then also ask themselves, the challenge of being the first winner and the first media house to produce that winner is that, can you be able to sustain it, going forward? So it's also a challenge, that with winning comes a lot of responsibility and a very tall order, going forward. My hope is that it doesn't just stay here, that we see very many journalists across, Africa winning this, and getting to learn them and to study the kinds of things that they're doing and appreciate them in that way. But of course, the fact that CNN has an Africa award for journalists, and now BBC has this one, does not necessarily point to a deficiency. In my view, that maybe it could also speak of something positive that needs to be to be praised and brought to attention. I wouldn't comment on what Gadara has said, because then we would need to understand what was the motivation, for example, for the CNN. What informed that. And what is it that those awards then are supposed to achieve for those that win, and even for the for CNN as a whole, for us to be able to make an informed